There are several scandals that come with loud music. They have chaotic interviews, screaming captions, and public breakdowns that are instantly recognizable. The controversies that start with quiet are another. The damage has already been done by the time they realize something is wrong because of the weird and oppressive quiet. This was just how it felt, because just when everyone believed that the mayhem around Kirk, Rashida, and Jasmine had finally subsided, everything erupted once more in a manner for which no one was ready. Not with yet another rumor, not with yet another dubious tweet, and not with some ambiguous, clumsy gossip article from a random blog attempting to get readers to click. What surfaced online this time appeared to be evidence. Shocking, direct, and icy evidence. And the entire topic shifted as soon as it appeared online. What had previously been classified as speculation suddenly appeared to be something much more serious, something tangible, something that could not be dismissed, disregarded, or covered over by a polished public persona. Because a fuzzy screenshot began circulating in reality TV group chats, fan groups, and gossip circles late that evening. People initially believed that the song was just another hoax, a clout-chasing edit, or a sloppy post meant to maintain past tension. However, consumers found it much more difficult to ignore the image when they zoomed in. The words DNA test results were at the top. Fans said they could see the name Kirk Frost directly beneath it. Then came 99, the number that made everyone go crazy. 9%. At that point, the internet began to spiral instead of scroll, because this wasn't just another muddy chapter in an already convoluted history. If what people were witnessing was true, it was a full-blown explosion, the kind of news that causes more than just a relationship to fall apart. A family's reputation, a company's brand, the heritage of reality TV, and every meticulously constructed version of the truth that individuals have been clinging to are all at risk. And the purported source was what made it even more explosive. The report that was making the rounds on the internet said that Jasmine had uploaded it to a private story, not for publicity, not to make headlines, and not to reach as many people as possible. In some way, it was even louder since it was private, because there is always a risk associated with private posts. They seem less contrived, less polished, more impetuous, more truthful, and more like someone who has finally given up on carrying a big burden and let it pass them by. Someone screen captured it in a matter of minutes. After then, it was reposted. Then, it was cropped by another account. Then it was shared on a larger page. Suddenly, a screenshot that was never meant to go farther than a tiny circle became the focal point of a massive online controversy. People were in disbelief. Supporters were incensed. T-pages had gone into overdrive. Additionally, the reactions became harsher, louder, and more violent as the photograph went from fan accounts to gossip blogs to larger entertainment venues. While some were astonished, others weren't. Others behaved as though they had been anticipating this moment for years. And in the middle of it all was Rashida, the one person that everyone was searching for. However, Rashida had vanished from sight. No narrative, no tweet, no enigmatic statement, no grin, no denial. Nothing. And for some reason, that quiet spoke more than a paragraph could. Because those who have watched this saga for a sufficient amount of time are aware of one thing. Rashida frequently indicates that she is not at ease when she becomes silent. It indicates that she is evaluating, calculating, and making decisions. It indicates that things are going on behind the scenes and that whatever happens next is probably not going to be pleasant. Naturally, the internet did what it always does. Overnight, it became a detective agency. People began retrieving old photos and comparing timings, locations, dates, backgrounds, and even because fans believed the kitchen surface resembled the one underneath the DNA documentation. An old photo purportedly shared by Jasmine last year was now being used as evidence. Others started going over Kirk's previous writings, appearances, and trip itineraries, noting strange gaps that were now more difficult to overlook. A conveniently peaceful period of time that suddenly seems less innocent in retrospect. A business trip here, a missed weekend there. In an instant, the public used screenshots, recollections, and gut feeling to construct a whole case. The hashtags then started to appear. Additionally, as the hashtags begin to appear, it indicates that the story has transcended the individuals involved and become part of the culture. It was no longer merely a rumor among fans. It was now an occasion. People immediately took sides. Some backed Jasmine, claiming that she had finally become weary of being portrayed as dramatic, crazy, or desperate. They didn't think she was being messy. After supposedly being rejected, discredited, and denied, she was bringing the truth to light. She was accused by others of timing it for attention, mayhem, cameras, and plot power. Because there is never a discovery in the realm of reality TV that doesn't raise suspicions about motivation. But one thing could not be disregarded. Motivation or not, silence, branding, or practiced public grins could no longer conceal the fracture caused by the image. Then another move was made. With a baby bottle in hand and the caption, "Receipts don't lie," was a succinct, astute, and effective follow-up post. That statement hit home like a slap, because there was no feeling in those 3 words. They sounded non-defensive. They sounded calculated, strategic, and in charge. It seemed like someone who thought the fight had already been won and was just waiting for the opposition to acknowledge it. The controversy had spread beyond the typical reality TV sections of the internet by dawn. It was taken up by more blogs. Commentators in the entertainment industry offered their opinions. Radio hosts began talking about it. Suddenly, fan pages unrelated to the show began publishing updates as if they were breaking news. And one horrifying question was the focal point of all that attention. What more was in store if it was only the initial receipt? It was a short-lived question, because Jasmine went live by daybreak. People flocked in as soon as that notification went out. Initially, thousands, then more, and perhaps more, since everyone knew what that life meant. The live was where the fire was either going to be fed or confined if the screenshot represented the spark. People expect tears after betrayal, so it was even more uncomfortable that she didn't look to be laughing, yelling, or what. They anticipate shouting. They anticipate a cracked face, a trembling voice, and a lack of composure. They were surprised to see someone who appeared well prepared and who opened with the kind of poise that only arises after someone has already shed tears, become angry, practiced, and reached a stage where emotion has solidified into intention. She wasted no time. She apparently attested to the screenshot's authenticity. It was purportedly said by her that it was Most significantly, she purportedly stated that Kirk's was the child in question. Social media went from loud to nuclear at that time. The remarks were coming in too quickly for anyone to keep up with. The audience wasn't only taken aback, they were starving, eager to learn more, hungry for background information, hungry for the next piece, the time frame, the motivation, and the consequences. Then Jasmine said something that totally altered the atmosphere. This was never meant to go public in this way, she said. She claimed that she had made an effort to deal with it in private, off stage, off social media, and off camera. However, she said that she had been made to appear as though she was lying, making up stories, and attempting to trap rather than expose a man. At that point, her public disclosure ceased to appear to many as turmoil for the sake of chaos. It began to resemble retaliation rather than haphazard devastation. Calculated answer. Then she reached away from the camera and came back with something that immediately took on symbolic meaning. A heavy folder, a folder in manila. She implied that there was more inside. There are additional records, communications, proof, and other elements that might turn this controversy into a collapse. Additionally, she ensured that audiences realized that the music they had watched thus far was just the beginning. That folder made all the difference since the drama. It becomes more like a case file and less like gossip once actual paperwork is included. A case file against a man who is becoming more and more silent. According to reports, Kirk had not yet responded to the public in a significant way. There was no thorough denial, no lucid justification, and no heartfelt message to his family, his supporters, or the viewers who had been following this story for years. Furthermore, there are 100 ways to interpret quiet in such situations: dignity, legal prudence, uncertainty, fear, humiliation, or tactics. However, silence seldom buys favor on the internet. Usually, it makes space for others to speak more loudly, and that's precisely what took place. Then came what was widely regarded on the internet as the most explosive claim to date. According to Jasmine, Rashida was already aware. Up until that point, the public narrative had primarily focused on treachery, so that line struck like lightning. However, a darker layer was now visible: secrecy, perseverance, damage control, and the potential that this reality had existed within the marriage long before the outside world learned about it. All of a sudden, the discussion went beyond whether Kirk had done something incorrectly. It turned into a question of how long those closest to him had been made to bear it. How long had Rashida known? How long had Jasmine waited? And how long had this whole thing been going on under the radar while everyone was grinning through appearances, promotions, family branding, and carefully chosen pictures of harmony? And many were much worse as that possibility became apparent. Some expressed strong empathy for Rashida, claiming that public judgment is simple when you are not the one involved in the betrayal, the home, or the business, and that marriage and humiliation are difficult. Some were far less understanding. They portrayed her quiet as enabling, tolerant, and prolonging a pattern that everyone else could see more clearly than she could. It was brutal, emotional, and messy. It's exactly the kind of public scandal that always arises when people think they know about your life based only on what they've seen on TV. However, the narrative was still developing. By the afternoon, there were rumors that production teams were relocating, that cameras had been spotted close to the boutique, that a sit-down was being pushed, and that behind the scenes, people were mobilizing around the controversy rather than merely responding to it. Because reality TV has a vicious instinct, it can tell when suffering is personal and when it has turned into a business venture. Producers were aware that they were starring at ratings dynamite if they actually saw what the public did. The people had created a whole mythology about what would happen next by nightfall. Is Rashida going to go live? Would Kirk say something at last? Would there be a public breakup? Would Jasmine make additional documents available? Would there be court records, text conversations, financial receipts, evidence of support, pictures, and a timeline? People were no longer observing a narrative take place. They were awaiting a decision. The dramatic arc of the transcript then indicates that things got worse. Jasmine came back, more intense than before. The baby was reportedly many months old when she disclosed this information. In contrast to any attempt to publicly remove himself from the child, she stated that there had been quiet support behind the scenes. Private financial assistance, private visits, and private activities. If accurate, such information struck particularly hard as it implies covert acknowledgement. Furthermore, a typical defense confusion is destroyed by covert acceptance. Knowledge is implied. It suggests consciousness. Even though the public was kept in the dark, it suggests that someone knew exactly what was happening. At that moment, internet users started to view Kirk more as a man cornered by his own purported pattern than as a man ensnared in a rumor. Then there was yet another agonizing turn. According to Jasmine, the narrative control was the problem. Not only the youngster, she said she was sick of being made to appear unstable while someone else maintained a polished appearance. I'm sick of being portrayed as the antagonist while someone else uses to publicly demonstrate respectability, family values, and husbandhood. Because it refers to something more than celebrity drama. That kind of comment always hits home. It talks about being told to keep quiet while someone else writes the official version of events, humiliation, and gaslighting. And that language is all too familiar to the internet. The story had grown beyond a reality TV scandal by this point. It turned into a discussion about performance, loyalty, and how much women are supposed to put up with in silence. While the guys who are causing the damage continue to receive more opportunities, justifications, stories, and soft landings. Even still, the scandal continued to escalate. According to the transcript, what transpired next seemed almost unbelievable in a manner that only pandemonium on reality TV can. According to reports, a picture of Kirk clutching a bundled baby appeared. At last, Rashida made a move. Not with a lengthy speech or a comprehensive explanation, but rather with a succinct, chilly article that had people on the internet reading every word. It didn't matter how long the message was. It was the mood, because they seem less sentimental and more definitive. Brief messages can occasionally have the most impact. For example, someone no longer wants to inflict suffering on an audience. It's as if someone has moved from uncertainty to clarity. Naturally, it was seen by the public as proof that the storm had completely penetrated the house. Bigger outlets were speaking by that point. The pundits were every second, pause, and screenshot caused reaction channels to break down. People were viewing the incident as if it were a real-time live series finale. The narrative then took a different turn. An emergency sit-down is described in the transcript. 3 chairs, cameras, and tense music filled the room as everyone waited for someone to say the one thing that would break the stillness. Jasmine is on one side, Rashida is in the center, and Kirk is on the other. No more reposts, screens, or discussion from others. Now that the purported truth was in the room, the atmosphere was dense with all that had not been said. Jasmine is said to have pressed the issue directly while holding the now iconic folder. In this version, Kirk attempted to downplay, soften, and explain his support without openly acknowledging his paternity. However, the transcript indicates that Rashida was no longer in the mood for kind language. She supposedly broke through the mist with a statement that only a wife who has been driven over her emotional threshold can make, pointing straight to the DNA and making the truth obvious. In storytelling, that time is crucial since it's when denial starts to sound weaker. It sounds desperate. Additionally, the audience may tell that the balance of power has changed when a man begins to seem frantic in the face of documentation. Jasmine apparently escalated once more after that. She implied that her decision to go public wasn't entirely motivated by the child. She stated in the transcript that she had evidence of additional behavior, including messages with another woman, and that Kirk had been getting ready to cut her off. At that point, the controversy ceased to be unique. One child's disgrace is one type of breakdown, which is why it multiplied. However, a child scandal combined with persistent accusations of infidelity turns into a trend. It's usually more difficult to defend patterns than individual errors. The story's emotional focal point is Rashida's purported response in that scene, not because she cries the loudest, but rather because she gets to the point where she is replaced by revulsion. It's a strong change. She poses queries. Disgust ceases to inquire. Hurt continues to hope that the answer will lessen the impact in some way. Disgust recognizes that there is nothing more to explain, and everything changes when someone arrives. Rashida ultimately gets up and leaves. According to the transcript, just that picture has a lot of weight. After years of enduring public storms, a woman has finally come to the conclusion that enough is enough, not with theatricals, movement, separation, or the act of physically escaping the humiliation. Because it seems more expansive than the actual scenario, That is the type of scene that viewers repeatedly watch. It turns into a refusal, a breaking point, a queen moment, and a symbol. However, the transcript adds another twist just as it appears that the crisis has peaked. Another pregnancy, another secret, another lady, another allegation. At that point, the narrative no longer feels chaotic but rather collapses into layers. The unidentified lady described in the transcript as Tia is said to come forward and reveal that she was pregnant in addition to having an affair with Kirk. The story is emotional. Structure is drastically altered by that revelation, because there isn't just one controversy that is spreading. Bit by bit, a whole secret universe is coming to light. Additionally, each new element makes the earlier ones seem even more plausible, harmful, and uncontrollable. That kind of twist always elicits the same response from the public. First, disbelief, then black humor, wrath, and finally, tiredness. The reality sounds too ridiculous to be taken seriously, so people start making jokes about it. They transform it into memes, because it's easier to make music than to think about the meaning. However, there is something different behind the jokes. The realization that this can no longer be dismissed as a small misunderstanding. If the transcript's account is to be believed, Tia stated that she was informed that Kirk was separated and that she didn't initially know the whole story, that she, too, had been placed in a predicament by selective honesty and incomplete truth. Whether or not people accept such a claim, the ripple effect of lying is another unpleasant aspect that it adds to the story, because adultery affects more than one person. A business is put in peril, a public image is destroyed, a wife is humiliated, a kid is concealed, a second woman is exposed, and a third woman is purportedly pregnant. A family name lingered in late-night chats, timelines, and blogs. That is the real scope of such a scandal. Several betrayals, all of them growing simultaneously rather than just one. Even that, the transcript claims, was insufficient. There were rumors of wire transfers, allegations, that money was being moved into personal scandals, and indications that the harm was now financial rather than just romantic. The emotional stakes in a betrayal story also increase when money is involved, because the discussion shifts from sadness to violation, from broken trust to broken structure to violation, from broken trust to broken structure.